cliffs ignore.
Hello viewers, today I'm blessed to be in the home of Dr. Tony Marinho, a friend and a brother that I look up to over the years because of his outlook and values in life. Dr. Marinho, welcome to this episode, sir.
Thank you very much, Nero, for having me. Thank you, viewers.
Thank you. I know that you're a medical doctor, but what got you into education to the extent that you started this thing called Educare?
I'm a doctor, as you said. And if you're in four walls in a small clinic and you see things repeatedly that you know can be prevented, you have to go out and do some prevention or arrange for some prevention. And if you see ignorance as the main disadvantage in life for everybody, because you can be educated and still be ignorant about some things, there's a need to make a difference. I went to St. Gregory's College and we grew up with many things called extracurricular activities, which we now call co-curricular activities.
Okay.
And I looked at the schools around us, and here today, or that time 30 years ago, they had nothing, almost nothing. It was just a poor supply of books and no supporting facilities at all. And then the government of the day was military, and it was obvious that they were not interested in education at all. So it behoved a group of us. We belonged to a small little group. It was called the group. It was a group of social friends.
Group of social friends.
Yes, and we brainstormed for 6 weeks when the military government of Abacha came in, and we worked on several areas that we thought could assist our people in getting through the difficult times. So education, agriculture, the economy, etc. But we didn't actually get much done in education. So I decided to take that particular aspect up. And the first program we did was to repair the roof of a school next to me. During the rainy season, when the children would rush, when it was raining, they would rush out to the next classroom.
Wow.
And so I roofed the classroom for maybe 100 and something naira at that time. But the painful thing was all the children there, their parents were artisans. And it would have cost them nothing to repair that, because they would provide the labor. Somebody would have provided the tin roof. But they didn't think that way at all, because they were thinking government should do everything for them. And this is a huge problem up till today.
Wow. So it was from your medical practice that you noticed the kind of problem that people have due to lack of education or information, and that you got started with Educare.
That's correct.
How are you able to sustain such a nice vision for over 30 years?
Because you're never alone, and you can't be alone, no matter how well you think you know how to do things. We've had a real run of wonderful support from people. Wonderful, but there are different ways people can support. You may not have money, but you may have time. You may not have time, but you may have a good thought process. You may come up with a good document. So all that combination of things allowed us to fund the necessary activities. What are we doing? We're buying footballs for children in school. We were set up the first computer learning center in Ibadan 30 years ago, when computers were really unknown. We buy lots of books. We buy equipment in schools that is of value to the children. Sometimes you think it's of value and it's not. We put a long jump pitch in a school, and 3 months later they turned it into a rubbish dump again. Because what we thought would be good for them, they didn't think was good for them. They just had no interest at all. So it's always very important to identify and interact with the children as to know what they need. And the teachers are underserviced in our country. When we were in school, the teachers all had the textbooks. They knew what to teach. They would encourage you in many ways. But unfortunately nowadays, many of the schools, even the teachers do not have the teaching material to teach you with. And you know that they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, except in Nigeria, where if you take a photograph of any of the children's classrooms, you will find hardly nothing on their walls. No pictures, no nothing. So we spent a lot of money and time buying posters, educational posters for the schools that we participate and work with.
That's as props to help educate the people better.
Yes, I mean, if you see a picture of a cell, it's different from reading about a cell and not seeing a picture. If you see a picture of a piano or a drum or whatever, and you don't see it, but you hear about it, until you see it before you know what it's about.
I used to have a problem with those things during my engineering students' days. They set a problem. They said the way of a camp profile moves. We never knew what
a camp profile. Yes. Or they tell you that this looks like snow. You say, okay, snow, really? In Nigeria? Are you serious?
Doctor, thank you so much for your time. I also noticed that you're a good author. You write books. What motivates you? Because you still write to write books. What are the motivations?
Well, if you have something to say and you think it should be preserved, and not everything you say needs to be preserved, I can must assure you, or you have a good storyline, you tendency is to write about it. I wrote my first poem in university, in medical school, from going on a ward round, and I was at how medical students were frightened of the nurses, frightened of the teachers, frightened of the consultants. So it was based on that I wrote that poem. But my first novel was written during youth corps, because during my house job I was in General Hospital, Lagos, and they brought in this gentleman in the middle of the night. A very, very important citizen brought him in, and he was dead. He said, I wanted to come and see somebody in the car. So I went out, and this person was dead in the car. And the man said, I want a death certificate. Well, he was one of the most powerful people in Nigeria. I've actually forgotten who he was, but I knew he was very powerful. And I said, when I examined the guy, opened his pupils, checked his, we didn't have touch, we didn't have cell phones to where your torch, you get a torch and you put in the eyes, and the person was definitely not alive. The guy, he gave me his name, and I said, yes, the man is obviously dead. So I issued a certificate, this man is definitely dead. And the chap went away. So I built on that story during youth corps to write a story called The Victim, which was a similar story which wound up in a wrong person being accused of murdering the person. And they wound up being executed because because there was a lot of miscarriage of justice at that time. Yeah. And you could see it and you worried about it. And so that was that. So that's how the story started. And that story was well received by those who read it, except they didn't like the ending, but the author has the right to whatever ending he likes. So then I developed other stories for children, and I enjoy writing.
Yeah, but sir, I've read some of your materials, and I think there are a few that talk about social order or social disorder. And looking at the situation we find ourselves in this country, which one do you think did more damage to our social order, the military or the civilian governments?
I am sorry to say that the damage is equally shared. We like to say it was the military government, and they have their big blame. But we've forgotten that before the military came in, there was Wete, which killed many people.
Yeah, which are Wete.
There was all sorts of disagreement. People were crossing carpet and doing all sorts of things. So, and there was theft in those times too. In fact, we used to, that was the time when we said, please only steal 10% of the contract. I remember writing an article for The Guardian those days saying, we want 10% contractors, those who will only inflate the contract by 10%. Now, of course, we've got 100%. Now we have contracts which are just paid for, but nobody builds anything. We've had those for many years. It's not today or yesterday or last year. These are 50-year-old projects that have done nothing just but consume Nigeria's money. The issue is out there, and I think there's a lot of blame in that group of people, which of course fed into the civil service. Okay. So the civil service and the contractor class became beholden to whoever would give them a contract. So that there was a loss of honesty there. Nowadays we talk about padding. We're very generous in our words. A man puts a 50% on a contract and says he's padding it. He's not padding it. He's a very corrupt individual adding extra money for people to take. What we don't understand is this. You don't have the same contract keep rewarding it every year. The Romans built roads. They will build 1 kilometer this year. Next year, they build the next kilometer. The following year, they build the third, fourth kilometer. And those roads lasted 2,000 years.
Yeah,
and they're all over the world. But in Nigeria, we build the same kilometer today. In 3 months' time, you build and you re-award the contract. And we keep re-awarding the same contract for the same kilometerage of road. I mean, it is a shame. We haven't got a 50-year road that would last us and then move forward, except maybe the bridges in Lagos were the masterclass for the Berger bridges. In those days, they lasted a long time.
Thank you, Doctor. One other question I want to ask is that the African culture, do you think it is compatible with what we call democracy these days?
Yeah, culture, the democracy is compatible with any culture. If you have systems in place that work, let me go straight to the point. We blame INEC when our elections fail, but it is the politicians who plan for the elections to fail. So why do we blame INEC?
Okay.
And so I would say if elections fail because there's rigging, for example, you ban the party you know that rigged. Next 4 years' time, they will not do it next time. But if you keep blaming INEC and saying INEC got it wrong, INEC did not get it wrong. INEC is, if you want a peaceful election, don't carry gun and don't bomb INEC and don't bomb the poor children who are officials. You know, somebody went to bribe them or somebody went to steal the ballot box from them. It wasn't INEC that did that. It was the politicians. Just as INEC is planning a peaceful election, the politicians are planning how to steal the ballot box or how to inflate the figures or how to do something bad to the very people that are supposed to be the youth corpers, for example, where they beat them up and all sorts of things happen. But we place our responsibility on the wrong group of people. INEC provides the election. Granted, you may get an INEC official who's open to be bribed, but your system should be able to identify those who are bribed and do something about them. Systems are in place now. The Chinese execute people when they steal more than a certain amount of money. It is well known. But people still steal and they still get executed. So no matter what system you have in place, it'll be open to. Look at the systems abroad where they were the EU guidelines and so on for contracts. They were blacklisting people all over the world. We now know that some of them are part of the people who were as corrupt as everybody else. Look at FIFA issues and so on. So there's nowhere where there is not corruption and bad things, even in democratic countries. But they try and stop. The evil is everywhere. Evil, the heart of man is
wicked.
That's what they say.
Wicked.
That's what is written in the Bible.
Thank you, sir. I noticed also that you appear to be a very private man. Work, home, a little bit of social activities. Who are your friends?
An interesting question. I said that in school we grew out of school and worked around Ibadan. Most of us, a group of us got together, mainly old students from the same set or old school students who went through university. They were in primary school, secondary school, or university together, and we called a group of friends, and we called that a group, and we're 30 families who did everything together. Now, if you do everything together, you've got husband's birthday, wife's birthday, wedding anniversary. So 30 times 3 is 90 activities a year. So, and then the children will have their various activities, and then there are other activities in the world. So that's a social pressure, which we enjoyed while we were 30, 40, 50 years old. But as you get older, of course, there are things you have to give up. So for me now, I still work a 7 to 5 day. So I'm busy, and I'm busy at work. I thank God for work. But so I come home basically I'm mostly exhausted, so I don't do much in the way of outing. I go to Lagos. I have family and friends in Lagos. I go to once a month sometimes. But I do have several friends in Ibadan here, who I will relate to on a very close basis.
And I'm privileged to be one of your friends.
Well, I'm not sure. We only see you twice a year, or maybe once a year. But we speak on the phone, and I see your podcast, so yeah.
Doctor, this is very interesting. A number of my friends have asked me this question: that how do you get to be close to somebody like Dr. Tony Marinho? I'm not a doctor, and I think my earliest contact with you had to do with when you had to help deliver my first baby a long time ago. Now, if you are given an assignment to say one or two things about Dr. Tony Marinho, how will you approach the assignment and what will you do? What you will say?
Well, I'd say my father was a doctor. He's a psychiatrist. And I learned a number of things from him. I used to accuse him when I wasn't a doctor that he was too generous with his time and money. He would have lots of patients that didn't pay a penny and be buying drugs. He was a psychiatrist and he gave drugs like Actil and things in large quantities. He used to just do this and do that and buy and so on. And I said, Daddy, what you don't give me? He said, it's not about the money. And I said, how can it not be about money? We were not a wealthy family or anything, just average middle class, So when I became a doctor, I think a lot of that rubbed off on me. I think I suppose everybody's got something inside them. They're aggressive or they're reserved or they're this, and it's nothing to do with them, it is their nature. Mm-hmm. So the nature of the beast in my own case is to be a little bit more conservative in my personal desires and more to do the best I can for those who I come into contact with. And medicine found me, if you like. I wasn't a particularly good student, but when I got to medical school, it was very easy for me. And I was able to do the needful. I got my distinctions and I got I passed my exams and I became a doctor. I worked in Ibadan all my life. And it's been wonderful for me. I get the occasional patient who may come up and say I'm an idiot, but they haven't come up that frequently. So I appreciate you at least said I hope I did well on that day. Medicine has really given me my life. My poetry, my writings, and other things, Educare, they are the hobbies, if you like. But medicine, in fact, medicine is not even work for me. It is it's a calling. I say it's a calling. One thing I amuse people by saying is that they should not call me doc. And I say, and they ask why. I said, because I'm a complete doctor. I worked very hard.
Yeah, okay. Is that what you mean by complete doctor?
That's what I say dock is where you put certain suspects and criminals. And a dock is where you park ships. So why should I be invite that group of friends? So I'm Dr. Marinho, I'm Dr. This, you can call me something else, but please never call me doc. You should love me. It's sort of, yes, it's slang and it's used in some countries. Okay. But people use it to menialize you sometimes. And I don't think it's right. I told my colleagues I think we should stick to doctor. It's not arrogance. I'm sorry to say, it's really not arrogance. It's just one of the things I think about in great detail sometimes. But it's been a privilege being a doctor, and it's been a privilege being able to help people.
It's a privilege to make a bit of money.
You make a living, you can make a living, but I could make a better living whether I was in America or in England or even in Lagos. So the living is not the thing. You can make a millionaire from one person and not see anybody for the rest of the day. That would destroy me.
Wow, okay.
Because that's not what life should be. You should be able to strike a balance.
So your practice is more like a ministry, so to say.
Well, I can't say that. That would be unholy.
No. Don't
and I didn't mean.
Don't look at ministry as a ministry of religion practice.
It's a calling.
Ministry as a calling, as calling people and that kind of thing.
It's a calling.
There's a question that's been burning my heart, which I will still go ahead and ask. You are in Ibadan over the years practicing medicine. Mm-hmm. Do you see any meeting point between traditional medicine and the modern science medicine?
Yes, traditional medicine causes us a lot of problems because there's a lot of faith in them. And the extremes of traditional medicine is actually body parts for religious purposes. That's the extreme, because they make potions and say drink this and that. That's the extreme of traditional medicine. Extremely negative traditional medicine. Every country in the world started off as traditional medicine, but some refined their medicine to identify what was good, what was bad. Don't use it. Keep this one when you want to poison somebody. Keep this one when you want to give them good health and so on. We have developed those to some extent, but they're still shrouded in mystery. Currently, there's an Institute of Traditional Medicine. IFE in those days tried to analyze a lot of traditional medicines in their pharmacy department, and they came up with some good information. But the step from there to pharmaceuticals has not taken place in Nigeria. The step from there to using an orthodox medicine has not taken place. But every Nigerian doctor knows the food he will recommend if a patient has constipation.
Okay.
You will not, I do that myself, you will recommend a cup of wedu and okra and ewatoshon, very soft beans. If someone has constipation, and that's what 90% of people have when they're over 70 and 80. That's when they go to tummy ache, ask them they're constipated. So these are things that you're using the traditional knowledge, which becomes traditional medicine. But the guys in America don't put that in, can call it maybe a laxative.
Okay.
But it's the same, has the same effect. So the traditional medicine has its place in some circumstances, but we've allowed it to also kill people. And I don't practice traditional medicine, of course. It's not I don't have enough knowledge to do it. There are those who are there, they claim they can do it, and perhaps in some circumstances it works. But tried and tested medicines tend to be Western, unfortunately. Do we spend enough time doing testing our own? And what has been tested before, do we bring it out and retest it? I don't think there's enough space in science in Nigeria to do that. The authorities don't seem interested enough to fund such research. And nobody's going to do it on their own. So
interesting. Doctor, on a personal note, your agelessness intrigues me a lot. The energy that drives you also I found very amazing. From your earlier years, 30s, 40s, 50s, you are now over 70.
Like you.
Like me, I'm also over 70 to the degree of God. How are you able to sustain such an active life, non-stop, consistent, over the years? What's the secret behind that?
I don't know. I think this is, we always say it is the grace of God, but I think we have to mean it now. Because the reason we mean it is that I see a child who's born and has a disease called retinoblastoma, and that child is 2 weeks or 2 months old. And I am looking at this child with my eyes of 76 years old, and this child has no vision and has a cancer in the eye. And you can't answer the question. You will ask it, why not me? Sometimes you have to actually say, why not me? Because answering why not me will make you realize there are things you must continue to do in order to help others, in order for you to justify the fact that you are not that child. Because you are sent there to help. You're sent there to be an intervener. You're sent there to do something for those people who are less. And I see my colleagues, younger, older, in wheelchairs and so on. And I know my time will come if I live long enough, because that is the fate of everybody. I was joking with the gentleman yesterday, he's 82. He was saying, all these prayers will go down. He was praying, he'd been prayed for long life for a long time, but he's in a wheelchair, he's this and that. And he asked himself, did I really pray for this? So, and I see them because of the nature of my job. I do ultrasounds, so I do their prostates and all that, and I see them all the time. And I know my own is coming if I live long enough. So it is the fear of, I've been given this gift. I can't sit at home and say I've retired. Not in here, where there are not that many hands to take over the job. So abroad where people are pushing you out because there are other people to take over and there's enough work to go around, fine. But here we still have a lot of our people have left.
They have left. Yeah,
they left years ago and are not going to come back. So there is a job, and God has made us some sort of experts in the matter. So we get to see things quicker than other people will get them. So we pray for work. We also have employees who will feed off our work. And we hope that we've made a commitment and a contribution that is of some value.
Doctor, thank you so much. My final question, I'm not too sure how to even approach it. I know you're not a politician, but you're interested in politics. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely.
To what extent?
Well, I turned down being a minister 20 years ago of health.
Wow.
Because I felt I couldn't work with the current president, the president of that time. And I upset a number of people, but I'm glad I did, because I found out later that it was only a question of put you there and then use you to get whatever contracts they wanted. So that was a bit unfortunate. But the interest I have in politics is not partisan. But sadly, there are some political parties that their ideology is white and black, if you like, and you have to choose some degree of honesty from total dishonesty. But like my friends always tell me, at the end of the day, that most politicians, most parties are the same. They wind up doing the same things. Whether they pretend to give you something back and take a balance, or don't give you anything, it is, Well, let me tell you something. What is most fearful for us is that we blame federal,
okay,
and sometimes on an ethnic basis. When you come to states, are you going to blame on an ethnic basis too?
Mm-hmm.
Because every state in this country has had enough to make its state very, very wealthy and very, very organized in terms of infrastructure and so on. But we keep building the same kilometer of road that I mentioned earlier. When it comes to local governments, I agree local governments have been shortchanged.
Okay.
But even when they are not shortchanged, what happens to the funds? And these are local people dealing with their brothers and sisters and their cousins. So you see, the systemic nature of the abuse of the citizen is almost pathological. And what everybody gets up, I've been writing articles since 1976. My first article, we were doing Youth Corps, and a paper in New Nigeria brought out an article which says Youth Corps was a 1-year paid holiday. I was second set of Youth Corps that time. My late wife was the first set.
Okay.
And they wrote this article, and I just finished 6 weeks first on call in Lafayette. It's now the Nasarawa state capital. So I wrote back to them and I said, look, you may be thinking it is for some people, but many of us are here to help. Yeah. And I gave a list of what went there. So they published the article. I was very surprised. And that's what led me to write articles on letters to the editor, and then columns in the press. But up till now, all those articles, very occasionally you get a call, oh, we're going to do this because of that article. But that's hardly any real advantage. You can take an article any journalist wrote 30 years ago, scratch out the Naira value, put in today's Naira value, the same article will be totally relevant. Wow. And you ask yourself, that's not a progressive country. It's not a progressive country at all. And our children are there. They need to have help. They need this help.
Thank you, sir. I know you are a very good Christian, so to say, even though the Bible says no man is good. But I see the way you practice your values and things like that. To what extent do you think religion can help normalize the kind of society that we have?
Well, it could normalize it, but we even abuse the religion. So we're in the situation of the person who comes to the first pew, the front pew in church, is the same as was in Jesus' time. The person who comes to the front pew, the Pharisees and so on. Yeah, we just Pharisees P. We can put politician for the same P, and you have the same effect, So and it's
the best they cook, they're wearing.
It's the same, yes. So they take over everywhere by their very nature, and those that are trying not to, the citizens will force them to out, and then if they don't agree, they find a way of getting rid of them, because they want to get there. They will inundate them with requests. They will get requests and so on. But the personal wealth of the politician today is so unbelievable relative to society that they've coined themselves out into or carved themselves out into a club on their own. And it is very, very, very wrong. There's no reason for a politician to have enough money to give 100 people sewing machines or whatever. It is their job. If that money is in the bank, is in the budget, they should get that budget to release those 100 sewing machines to the constituents. There's nowhere in the world where the politicians do the type of things that our own politicians think it is their right to do, and they're wrong to do, because for every one thing they give you, they've hit 10 beside. And we've seen it so many times with palliatives. How dare you put your picture on a palliative to help people out of poverty? It is just so arrogant in our sight.
And insensitive.
And it's insensitive. You know, where is where, but for the grace of God go I. It's just not there. And this needs to be dealt with. I don't know how they can deal with it. The idea of let your left hand do not know what your right hand is doing needs to apply in some of these cases. But they need to just get left to me. They should go on graded salary. If PAMSEC is level 17, they can be 18 and 19. President can be on 20. And after that, you go and feed yourself. In America, the head of state in the White House, I'm told that they feed them. He's responsible for feeding. He has to pay for the cooks and stewards in his house.
Yeah.
So, but here, we give them 15 billion to renovate one house, you know, and it is undisclosed, the budget that they use for entertainment. Meanwhile, the people are suffering. Drive down any street, you see the children who can't get into school because we haven't built enough schools for them. And if the school is there, we haven't put enough teachers there. We put teachers, we haven't put books there. We build a library, we don't put any books in the library. So, and a country that doesn't look after education is building destruction. So.
Thank you so much, Doctor. And the viewers, a number of people too do wonder where this man, Niran Fafura, is coming from. It comes from interaction with people like Dr. Tony Marinho. Even though it's just about 2-3 years older than me, as you can notice, I let you know that what I learned from him continuously encourages me to focus on real values of life. Can you imagine somebody offered a position of Minister of Health years back and he turned it down because of his values? Can you do that? It's a question we should ask ourselves. Anyway, I have to end this episode. Thank you for your attention. I pray that you subscribe if you have not, you share, and you like this episode. One of these days, we'll get to you. Hear your views. I still remain Niran Fafura. My people call me Papa Egu. God bless you.
Emphasizing the truth in an